Welcome back, everybody. We're going deep today on the legacy of Malcolm X.
Oh, a fascinating choice.
Yeah, and it's timely too, with this new lawsuit from his daughters against the FBI, the CIA, and even the NYPD.
Oh, wow.
They're claiming, get this, that these agencies were actually involved in his assassination back in 1965.
It's a bold move for sure,
Yeah.
bringing those long-held suspicions back into the spotlight after all these years.
And what's really helped me understand this whole thing is the source, Investor.
Oh, yeah.
It does so much more than just call him a civil rights leader. It shows just how complex he was.
Definitely. Malcolm X was, he really was something else. A true revolutionary, went way beyond just civil rights, questioned the entire system, held America accountable for its hypocrisy.
He even took on President Kennedy, right?
He did, head on. Saw Kennedy's global focus as, well, kind of a way to ignore the real racial problems here at home. Felt like the Cold War was getting more attention than Black Americans struggling right here in America. And he didn't spare the civil rights movement either. Thought they were too willing to compromise, too accommodating.
So instead of integration, what was he pushing for? Something
Oh, true.
stronger.
Empowerment, that's the word, Black empowerment, self-reliance, a complete separation from the white power structure. By any means necessary. Wasn't just a slogan for Malcolm X, it was a philosophy, a way of life. Black people had to defend themselves against oppression however they could. Obviously, clashed with Dr. King's nonviolent approach.
So it was more than just tactics, huh? Like a whole different vision for the future.
Exactly. King dreamt of integration, equality within the system. Malcolm X. He wanted a separate Black nation, independent, deciding their own destiny. Totally different.
It's hard to imagine where those ideas came from, especially given his early life.
His transformation is incredible, really. Early life. Poverty, crime, feeling lost, then prison. And that's where it happened. Surrounded by all that despair, he found the Nation of Islam.
The Nation of Islam, weren't their teachings kind of controversial?
Oh, absolutely. At the time, they believed that Black people were the original humans, white people were created by evil, like literally a devil race.
Wow.
Pretty radical, right? Especially back then. But for Malcolm X, a young man searching for his place, facing constant oppression, it was a revelation. Gave him identity, purpose, fueled his anger at the racism he'd experienced. He dove into those teachings, became this powerful voice for the Nation of Islam.
But things didn't stay smooth with them forever, did they? What happened?
And that's where it gets interesting. That's where the U.S. government, the FBI specifically, starts playing a bigger role. As Malcolm X became more prominent, so did their interest in him.
Makes you think about that lawsuit from his daughters, doesn't it? All those claims about the FBI being in his life.
Oh, absolutely. They're saying it wasn't just watching, it was active disruption, trying to bring down the Nation of Islam. And Malcolm X, with his growing influence and his, radical views, he became a target.
You said active disruption. What exactly did the FBI do?
They had this program, COINTELPRO, basically counterintelligence. It was all covert ops, infiltrate and disrupt groups they considered subversive. And the Nation of Islam, separatist, critical of the government, definitely on their radar. Disinformation, creating tension, even instigating violence, they used it all.
So they weren't just spying, they were trying to take him down.
There's definitely evidence pointing that way.
Right.
Whether intentional or not, their actions created this atmosphere of paranoia and mistrust within the Nation of Islam, which some argue led to the tensions that caused Malcolm X to break with the group in '64.
That break must have been huge, both personally and for his politics.
A turning point. The start of a new chapter, one where he began questioning some of those core teachings, forming his own, more nuanced vision of what social justice could be.
A chapter that ended way too soon. It's impossible to talk about Malcolm X without talking about his assassination. Even now, almost 60 years later, it's still so shrouded in mystery.
Yeah, it's this pivotal event, a tragic ending to a life that was, he was really shaking things up. And with this lawsuit from his daughters, it brings it all back.
Feels like they're not just looking for closure, they want the whole truth, finally.
It's about accountability. They believe, and a lot of people do, that there was something bigger going on, a conspiracy, like the government wanted him silenced. He was too critical.
So let's rewind. February 21st, 1965, the Audubon Ballroom. What happened?
Malcolm X, he's about to give a speech, a big one. Some thought it would mark a whole new direction for him. He gets on stage, and then chaos. Gunfire, multiple shooters, and he's hit fatally.
And 3 men, all from the Nation of Islam, they were arrested, convicted. But there's always been this doubt, right?
Always. The case is full of holes, unanswered questions. Witnesses saying different things. Some said shots from the front, others from the back. And then there's this missing witness. Said he had info that could have cleared one of the guys, but he vanished. Poof. Gone. Never testified. Adds to the whole mystery.
And this is where COINTELPRO, that FBI program we talked about, this is where it gets really
Mhm.
interesting, right?
It all ties together. COINTELPRO. It was all about disrupting groups the FBI saw as threats. And the Nation of Islam, with their separatist views, they were a prime target. Some even say that the FBI, whether on purpose or not, created the environment that led to the assassination. All that tension, suspicion within the Nation of Islam
Yeah.
might have contributed.
So we're left with this puzzle, pieces that don't fit. And his family's still searching for answers all these years later. That lawsuit, it's more than just legal, isn't it?
It's a fight for the truth. They want those government files on Malcolm X released. They want to know what really happened that day and what role, if any, did the government play. It's huge. It's about legacy. It's about history.
It's amazing how Malcolm X's image has changed over time. He used to be seen as this angry militant figure, but he was so much more than that.
Oh, absolutely. A complex man. Intelligent, compassionate. Sure, his early speeches were fiery, confrontational, but he went through this huge transformation in those last few years.
He left the Nation of Islam, their separatist ideas, and started embracing a more inclusive view of human rights in general.
Going to Mecca was a turning point. Seeing Muslims of all colors worshiping together, that changed him. He saw that Islam was universal. He came back different, advocating for human rights as a global issue, not just a Black American one.
And that global view, connecting with those anti-colonial movements, it feels so relevant today, all these interconnected struggles for justice.
He was ahead of his time, seeing how all these fights for liberation were connected. Racism in America, colonialism in Africa, imperialism elsewhere. It was all part of the same system of oppression. He got that.
And his legacy, it's not just in movements, it's everywhere. Art, music, literature. He's an icon, even for people who might not agree with everything he said.
That's the power of his voice. That conviction, speaking truth to power no matter what. It crosses generations, cultures. He embodies that spirit of we shall overcome, even though the path is never easy.
And he makes us look at our own history, the dark parts, the FBI suppressing dissent, those systems of inequality, that lawsuit from his daughters. It reminds us that this is still happening.
It's a call for transparency, for someone to be held responsible. And it challenges us. We have to look at ourselves, our own role in these systems, and work to change them.
So we've covered a lot, his life, the changes he went through, that mystery surrounding his death, and his daughters still fighting for answers all these years later. It's been a lot, but what does it all mean for us now? Why should we still care about Malcolm X in 2024?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
His legacy, it's complicated, multi-layered, and, well, I'd argue, more important than ever. What he was saying back then, that call for self-determination, that critique of the system, it's still relevant to social justice movements today.
It struck me how much he challenged not just the obvious things like racism, but also the Black leaders of his time. He wasn't afraid to call them out.
Oh, yeah. He saw being complacent as dangerous, like accepting the very system holding Black people back, those who compromise too easily, those who settled for slow progress instead of real change. He had no time for that.
And yet he also changed, right? He moved past those separatist ideas from the Nation of Islam and started to see human rights as something bigger.
Going to Mecca, that was huge for him. Seeing Muslims of all races together practicing their faith, it shattered those old beliefs he had about race. He came back a changed man, advocating for human rights on a global scale, not just for Black Americans.
And that global perspective, connecting with those anti-colonial movements, it feels so relevant today, all these different groups fighting for justice.
He was ahead of the curve, absolutely.
Yeah.
He saw the links between all these struggles, racism here, colonialism in Africa, imperialism everywhere. It was all part of the same system of oppression, and he understood that.
And his legacy, it's not just in political movements, it's everywhere. Art, music, books. He's an icon, even for those who might not agree with everything he said.
It's that voice, unwavering, speaking truth to power no matter the cost. It resonates across generations, across cultures. He embodies that we shall overcome spirit, even though the road is never easy.
And he makes us confront those uncomfortable parts of our history, the FBI suppressing dissent, those systems of inequality that are still here. That lawsuit from his daughters, it's a reminder that these things haven't gone away.
It's a demand for the truth, for accountability. And it challenges each of us, to look at ourselves, our own role in these systems, and to work to change them.
What do you think Malcolm X would say about the world today? The good, the bad, everything in between?
Well, I can't speak for the man himself, but knowing him, His commitment to truth and justice, I think he'd be encouraged by the progress we've made, but also impatient. He'd want us to be bolder, to push harder for real equality.
No. He'd remind us that freedom, it's not a destination, it's a journey, a struggle. And to fight for justice, you need courage, conviction, and a willingness to challenge the way things are, even when it's hard.
He might even quote himself, "There is no better than adversity. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve your performance the next time." He'd tell us to learn from the past, to use those setbacks to fuel us, to never give up on building a better world.
That's a great note to end on. We hope this deep dive into Malcolm X's life and legacy has given you something to think about. He's someone who continues to inspire, to challenge us, even today. His story, it shows us that history isn't just dates and facts, it's a living thing, full of struggle, resilience, and the fight for justice.
And most importantly, I think, it shows us that we all have a role to play in shaping the future, in carrying on the work that he started.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep asking those tough questions, and keep fighting for a better world.